So this is a very long distance call that we have here. So bear with us if we have any hiccups. And Murray, I've covered aquaponics several times on other episodes of Off Grid Journey. Just the basics of it, just to give people a basic understanding. And since we're fortunate enough to have you on, we could get a little deeper into things. I think that you have the most sophisticated system designs that I've ever seen, and things just seem to be getting better and more advanced, and I think that your plans are really the way to go for somebody that wants to get going with aquaponics at home, in their own place. And I've been curious about how you got started in this.
Well, it was really an accident, I have to say. I'd like to be able to say that I went and studied at some university and did a PhD and then started doing it, but it was just an accident because I've always gardened. I grew up in a farming area in my childhood, and my dad grew small crops for a living, and amongst other things, like a lot of small crops farmers. And I was quite familiar with all that kind of thing, and always gardened in my own backyard. I live on 10 acres, and we had a very long drought here where I live. Went for almost 15 years, actually. We would term it a green drought. You get enough rain to make the grass look green, but not enough rain to fill up the dams and aquifers. So, it was a period of time when my dams on my 10-acre property went dry and I could no longer garden. And someone rang me one day and started describing to me this system of aquaponics. The guy didn't call it aquaponics. He didn't know what it was called, but he described to me how you could grow fish and plants together. And I just got so excited because the small use of water was what really attracted me in the first place, because here in Australia we're quite used to having periods of time when there's no rain for long periods of time, so we're quite good at conserving water. But anything that would save water to me was just like magic. And imagine having fish as well. I just couldn't believe it. I thought, this is too hard to believe. So being an impetuous kind of a person, I started that very day. I thought, wow, I've got to have a go at this. Remembering that back then, this is only 8 years ago. 8 years ago, if you did a Google search for aquaponics, there was hardly anything there. Half a dozen hits, that's all. So there wasn't much information to go on. So being an experimenter by nature, I just jumped right into it and started from there. That's how it started.
Incredible. And so how did you construct your initial systems? What kind of materials were you working with?
Well, we used fiberglass because I'm a boat builder by trade, and we were building boats here. We've got a workshop on the property where we've built boats for 20 years or something. And we could buy links, and we couldn't really find anything we figured was suitable. So straight away, I said to the boys working in the shed, let's stop work on this boat and let's make some fiberglass tanks and grow beds, which is what we did. And we can even else would be interested in what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to do it, so we made fiberglass beds. It took us a few days, and we set that initial system up, and it's still here, still operating all this time later.
Mm-hmm.
And we've modified it lots, of course, because being an experimenter by nature, we had to find out what worked and what didn't work, and away we went from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was surprised that I didn't start gardening with aquaponics a long time ago. My family did a lot of gardening, especially hydroponic gardening when I was a kid in the late 70s and early 80s. And we also had a lot of tropical fish, but we never really put the two together. There were always two separate systems. And we had the tropical fish inside and our greenhouses outside with the hydroponics and the solutions that you have to mix up and so on. And basically, hydroponics requires a lot of nutrients. You're constantly having to add things to the solution, and it's really expensive. And
that's true. That's so true. And I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
No, go ahead.
Not putting the two together is amazing. Once you understand aquaponics, it's one of those moments where you think, why hasn't someone done this before? And of course, people have been doing it for a long, long time. Actually,
sure.
America's got a long history of people doing it there. The University of Virgin Islands is one that comes to mind. Another researcher of yours called Dr. Mark McMurtry, who 35, 40 years ago wrote papers about aquaponics. And so there's a long history of it, but it's never really caught on because I think it's a thing for this time. Never before has the planet been in a position where we need to think very carefully about how we do things. And, of course, aquaponics pops up as an amazing solution to a lot of our modern problems.
Well, I see a lot of problems that we're having right now, and they're the reasons why I started doing aquaponics and started gardening a lot more, in particular in my greenhouses. And we're seeing drought right now, major problems with having enough moisture, enough water, and so we have to look at systems that are methods of agriculture that use much less water. We're also seeing the collapse of the fisheries in the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean, and at the same time, we're seeing demands for protein, for humans increasing, and then there's the contaminants in the atmosphere. I've been watching this nightmare unfold at Fukushima for over 3 years now, and the Pacific Ocean is becoming contaminated with cesium-137 and strontium-90 and plutonium and all sorts of nasty things. And I just read a report about how the lettuce crop in California was heavily contaminated with cesium-137 from Fukushima fallout, which I expected it was because I had tested it with some of my own equipment shortly after we were getting fallout from it. And it was a lot of vegetables that I tested from the San Joaquin Valley in California were radioactive. And so we've got, so many threats right now to the ecosystem that we really need to start looking at better ways of producing food, more efficient ways, and decentralizing the production of food.
Absolutely. One doesn't want to be an alarmist, but, thinking people everywhere, and even people that don't think that much, are beginning to realise that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
There's something radically wrong with our food supply system, and it's going to hit us very badly very, very soon. Mm-hmm. Just this last week in Australia, there was a program on one of our free-to-air channels, SBS channel, and they were talking about the subject matter was the impending pandemic. And laying out the plans that the Australian authorities have in place for when the pandemic hits. They said it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Yes.
And one of the things they advised people to do was the people that will be better off will be those that have a backyard garden. It's incredible what they were saying. There's only 3 in Australia, and America's probably the same. Only 3 days or to 5 days maximum of fresh food in the country at any given time. That's if and they've made the point that the people who have a backyard garden will be those who will survive the best. I thought that was just amazing.
Well, even if there's an economic problem, you're gonna see it in the grocery stores. Shortly after the debacle with the banks in 2008, I noticed that some of the grocery stores in my area weren't restocking their shelves. And one place in particular near my house, I mean, it was remarkable. I couldn't believe it. They weren't restocking. The shelves were getting bare, and I thought that they were going to close their doors. And that could happen. You could have a major economic collapse where you have these big grocery stores and they don't have the resources, they don't have the capital to purchase the products that they need to sell to stock the shelves, and just like that, it's everything starts to fall apart, and I think most grocery stores where we are only stock about 3 days worth of products, and then that's it. And when I lived up in Portland and up in Seattle, we experienced some pretty bad weather up there, and there were times when we were without power for 3 or 5 days, and the shelves got bare really fast, and and people get desperate if they don't have food after 3 days or so, and so
absolutely.
it is good to learn how to garden, learn how to grow a garden, and produce your own food. Many of my friends are preppers, and they have their survival seed bucket, and they go, well, when it hits the fan, I'll start planting a garden, and I'll grow my own food. And I go, well, have you ever done it before? And they go, no, I got my seeds, and well, how are you storing them? How old are they? Do you know anything about this? What are you going to plant them in? How are you going to fertilize them? How are you going to water them? And all these things. And you're not just going to instantly become a farmer or a gardener just because you have a bucket of seeds. I mean, these are skills you have
Absolutely.
to develop. You have to learn.
Yeah. At least the people are on the journey anyway. That's what I think. At least they're aware of the fact that they need to do something. But boy, if only they'd start. I mean, aquaponics really answers a lot of the problems. And of course, the big downside to aquaponics, if there is one, and that is we need to have a pump.
Yes,
So
exactly.
we need some kind of a power supply. But, it's only minimal required, so it's pretty good. And of course, wicking bed. I don't know if you've heard about wicking beds yet or not, but the invention of a guy from Queensland here, Australia.
Yes.
And, it's just amazing what you can produce out of a wicking bed. Can't get fish dinners, of course, but, there are ways of gardening using minimal water in a very sustainable, more importantly, sustainability is very important, but to me it's very important that the system is an ecosystem. In other words, we use natural processes to produce our food rather than relying on artificial fertilizers, because killed to the farming land here in Australia with the overuse of artificial fertilizers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important for us all to learn how to do things in the proper way.
Yes. So what's the comparison of water consumption between an aquaponics system and a traditional, soil culture system?
Well, we've got a researcher here in Australia, Dr. Wilson Leonard, who's one of only 3 or 4 people in the world that's actually obtained their PhD on the studies of aquaponics. And he says that you'll only use 10% of the water in an aquaponics system to produce a particular crop, compared with the same crop produced in regular dirt farming or gardening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an astonishing figure when you think about it. But once you understand how aquaponics works, it's not surprising, because our water can't get away. In a regular garden or farm, the moment you irrigate or water, the water goes down soil percolates away get away and can't be wasted. So if you design it correctly and well, and your plumbing is good, which it ought to be anyway, you will only use the water that the plants actually use. And that's, you can't get any more efficient than that. That's the way it is.
Yeah, I usually have to top up for evaporation, especially when it gets really warm. And I'll hear my pump will start humming a little bit. I'll realize I have to add a bit of water to the system, dechlorinated, of course. And but that's about it. But otherwise, I found that I don't use nearly as much water as I would in my raised beds that have soil in them.
Yep.
And another thing too, I'm converting a greenhouse over to aquaponics this week, and the main reason why I decided to do it was because I'm tired of making soil. And I'm always having to, replace that soil. The nutrients become depleted and salts build up, and it's a lot of work. It's backbreaking work. Shoveling in, mixing the soil, shoveling in the soil, removing the old soil, and what to do with all that old potting soil.
Aquaponics is so much easier.
Aquaponics
is less labor.
Absolutely. We've got clients who are, retired farmers, whatever, and, some hardcore gardeners, people that have been hardcore gardeners all their life. And once they start doing aquaponics, they all, without exception, say, this is the easiest gardening we have ever done. And it's true. Obviously, you've got to follow some simple rules. You've got to do it properly. You have to look after the fish well. It's not autopilot. Unfortunately, these days, modern man has, we want a press button solution to everything. And we even get some people ask us, can we just totally automate it? So that we press a button and start an aquaponic system, and then we come home from work and there's the vegetables already washed, cleaned, and put on the bench. I know that's a silly example, but people seem to want that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But once you accept the fact there's a little bit of work required, aquaponics gardening and wicking beds are the easiest thing you can ever possibly do, and very, very productive, I've got to say.
Yes, I tell people that, you know, when it comes to problems with your crops, the farmer's shadow is the greatest prevention. So it's good to pay attention to your garden, and especially when you have an aquaponics system, because you have living things in there and you have your fish and you've put them in a unnatural environment, and they're dependent upon the systems you've put in place. And so if you ignore them, you could have some problems. I had a huge disaster recently just because I had an appointment. I own a number of businesses, and I had an appointment that got me into my farm late, and I had a bunch of problems, and ultimately I had to pump some air, and my water was really warm, and I ended up losing some fish, and if I'd showed up on time, it would have been prevented. So so it is. I would love it if I could completely automate things to the point where I could ignore my system more, and maybe in time I'll figure that out, and maybe you will teach me how to best do that.
I really like interacting with my garden. Actually,
me too.
I've got this belief that it doesn't matter whether you come from a Christian perspective or an evolutionary perspective. I believe that we're connected with the earth and connected with animals, and there's something magic about aquaponics, and I don't know what it is. I think this is the factor myself, because we find people, when they discover aquaponics, they get so excited. They really, really do. And you think, why are they getting so excited about growing a few lettuce? But it's built into our DNA that we get so much satisfaction and joy out of growing food. We really, really do. And aquaponics fulfills that. We're getting all fairly tattooed, but that's a factor that you can't describe. I mean, I have people send me a photograph of their first lettuce, and they're so excited. It's like as if they've just had a baby. It's amazing the joy and satisfaction you get from growing your own food.
It makes me very happy. I found my bliss working. I think we might have lost you there. Are you still there with us, Murray?
I'm still here. I'm listening for you to say something.
Oh, we started to break up a little bit. Yeah, I found my bliss working in my greenhouse, and I realized that I just lose hours, and the weekends would just disappear, and I actually enjoy the physical work of gardening. I don't mind it a bit, and it gets pretty warm out there, but I like the time that I spend working my garden, and so that's why I wanted to do as much of that as possible, and I like to produce crops for home, and I produce some things for a few restaurant customers, and I really enjoy it. It makes me happy. The other day I was harvesting some kale from a little system on my patio, and I brought it into my wife in this big basket, and she was all excited, and then she made kale chips out of the kale that we harvested. But we grew that completely with aquaponics, with the waste from our fish, and I didn't add anything else to it. And we're growing crops, and I've got kohlrabi out there and some celery, and the things are growing really well. And it's very exciting to look out there and see the crops growing, and then soon enough we'll have some fish that we could put on the barbecue, and I'm really looking forward to that. I've got bluegill in that system right now, and they seem to be doing all right. You keep talking about these wicking beds, and you've put together a set of plans for an aquaponics system that, if people want to purchase the plans and put together their own system, they can. And I mean, your system has all of the bells and whistles, and I was excited to see the incorporation of the wicking bed, and And so there's different ways that you could grow your vegetables with aquaponics. I mean, you could have gravel and deep water culture, which is just water and rafts. Or, another method is NFT, the nutrient film technique, and there's even aeroponics and vertical grow systems. And I mean, all these things can be added into an aquaponics system, but your designs are just very elegant, I think. Do you want to step through the features in your latest plans that people can purchase through your website?
Yeah, okay. We've got a set of plans that we call the Indie range of plans, and the name Indie came about because we were doing a project in India, and we were designing there. No, that's not a whole story, actually. Really interesting story, that one. But anyway, out of that has come the Indie plans, which we built the first prototype just on 22 months ago now, and tested it and tried it and made sure it worked properly. It's the culmination of our time in aquaponics and realising what people need to do to be able to supply food for their family. And, of course, the incorporation of the wicking bed is done very deliberately because in aquaponics we find we can't grow all that well things like, root crops such as potatoes, sweet potato, beets and things like that, beetroot and some onion varieties. So to have a complete rounded diet, you need to have a wicking bed to do it well. Incorporating those systems, gravel media beds, which we believe are very, very important, because in those gravel media beds, you end up achieving a marvellous nutrient bank and a whole nutrient system based on an ecosystem. And in those gravel beds, you'll have a build-up of all the microbes and protozoas and fungi and beneficial bacteria that are needed to produce nutrient-dense vegetables. It's more important to focus that way rather than just trying to get some vegetables that look green and maybe look okay, but want them to be nutrient-dense. So we've gone to a lot of trouble to make sure that the system produces food that is actually very nutritious. And not only on the vegetable side, on the produce side, but also on the fish side. So interestingly, there's a researcher in Canada, Dr. Nick Savadoff, who has written some very interesting on the hence on an eco level. And aquaponic systems do not get sick very often, unlike fish that are found in a aquaculture system, which have constant problems with disease control. We rarely see sick fish in an aquaponic system. In a home system, if you kill fish, it's nearly always your own fault, I'm sorry to tell you. It's not often fish get some disease. So when you create this ecosystem, and the gravel grow bed is very important to that part of the process, you're providing nutrient for the entire system out of that is very, very important to do. And it's my personal belief also that simply cannot become a master gardener unless you become a master composter. You must really learn how to make compost, and we show with those plans how to incorporate the benefits of that into the aquaponic system so that you are doing everything as naturally as you possibly can, but with the most wonderful, supreme, high-class, I can't think of enough adjectives to describe the nutrient-dense produce you'll be able to produce. So we've got two sets of plans now. One is the Indie 23, as we call it, which is 23 square metres of growing area or 250 square feet. We've now got the Indie 11.5, which is half that size, incorporates all the same benefits, but the plumbing's a bit different. And we've just produced a book of plans which has the Indie 11.5 in it, and how to make an aquaponic system out of some totes, another one how to make it out of some old bathtubs, right down to if you're a do-it-yourselfer and you like to make things out of recycled materials, you can do that. If you want really good quality or food production system, use the Indie plan systems.
Yeah,
if I could just say one thing more about food production at home. I'm always amazed at people's sense of values. You'll have someone who'll go to the electrical store and they'll spend 10 or 11,000 and louder, and yet they will not spend $10,000 or $11,000 on a home food production system. To me, the value system should be completely reversed. We should have people very good home food production system. To me, it's absolutely imperative the day is not far away, I believe, when people will really regret not having a change of thinking about their value systems in regard to how they spend their.
Yes, I completely agree with you there, and people need to rethink the landscape on their property and get away from cultivating turf, growing grass. And
what a waste of time and money that is.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, waste of time. Can't eat it. You wouldn't want to eat it.
Artificial fertilizers.
Yeah.
People pour artificial fertilizers on it by the ton. They spend a fortune on it. If they were to stop and think how much money they spend on that and turn that into food production, we've got a client in Adelaide, for example, in Australia, and he lives in one of the swanky suburbs of Adelaide, and a veggie garden. But he said, too bad for you. I've got my whole yard as a garden now, so veggie garden, so too bad. And, we've got to have a change, can we?
Yes, we really need to change our values. And when you're in a suburb, there's a lot of peer pressure from your neighbors to have your lawn, your yard, everything look a certain way. And I know that I irritate my neighbors because I'll spend more time on my gardens than I will on my ornamental plants, and that just happen to come with my house. And I'd rather go and plant another crop or harvest something than spend a bunch of time trimming my hedge or pulling weeds.
Some lettuce, brother.
Yeah.
Put some lettuce over the thing.
Yes. So where's the best way to obtain your plan sets? Directly through your website?
Yeah, directly through our website, although we have a number of people in America now who are just gearing up to make them available directly from there so that it's a bit easier for postage. The plans are only available in hard copy because, you can't really work off a set of plans and build something intelligently if you're trying to use it on your smartphone.
Right.
So they're only available in hard copy, and they're beautifully produced. They're in full colour, glossy paper, all that kind of thing. So for now, aquaponics.net.au, aquaponics.net.au is our website, and if you see the links there, you'll be able to get the plan set. I've got to say, the MD 23 plan set, we have now over 30 builds going on around the world right now in all sorts of places. Austria, the USA, of course, Australia, Great Britain, South Africa. There's people all over the world building the Indy 23 system right now. So it's really exciting for us,
So the question that I always hear from people when you talk about aquaponics is, how much food can it produce? Can you feed your family feasibly on aquaponics system? And how big does it need to be to feed a typical family?
Well, we put a lot of research into that, and I'm glad you asked that question because there's an organisation here in Australia, a gardening club, that has done some really unique for a family of four, the typical so-called family of four, mum, dad and two kids.
Sure.
And they work out that you need 30 square metres of growing area and a good planting regime. In other words, on Monday you'll plant 2 broccoli seeds, for example, and so on. You've got to be organised in what you do. But 30 will produce all your fresh green vegetables, potatoes, sweet potato, you name them all, anything you can imagine. You will grow that for a family of four without a doubt, provided you follow, and you do it intelligently. And that's what the premise we started on with the Indy 23, and we've proven that works. See some crazy things on some, I'm sad to say, American sites. There's one that claims you'll grow 10 times much more and half the time and half the space. If you do the mathematics, you'd throw a seed in and you'd run for your life. There's some silly claims made about what you can do. We caution people about that.
I saw one, and it was just a very small little system made out of a couple plastic containers, and it made some crazy claim like you could grow 10,000 pounds of food in a month or something. I mean, I might even be exaggerating, but I was looking at that going, no, that's not possible. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, and there's one website I'm thinking of that He popped up about 3.5 years ago for the first time, and the guy then claimed to have been doing it for 10 years, and 3.5 years later now he's been doing it for 40 years. If people do their due diligence, they should be able to find good information and be able to go ahead and do it at whatever level they choose, you know.
Yes.
If they want to buy a set of plans and build a really good quality system, there's that. If they want to build something out of, recycled materials, do that as well. You can do it. You can do a really good job of it at all kinds of levels. There's really no excuse not to have a back garden, in my view.
I have a friend that built an aquaponics system just pretty much out of junk in his garage, and it's not the prettiest looking system at all, but it's incredible what he grows in it. I'm very jealous when he puts up pictures on Facebook of things that he's grown, and it's a productive system, but it's ad hoc and just little bins and totes and hunks of plastic and things that he cobbled together. And he even saves his Starbucks cups and cuts little holes in them and uses them for net pots and recycles as much as he can. And he takes a lot of pride in that. That element is important to him. I'm more into very functional things, efficiency and function and nice clean appearance and that sort of thing. And but he cranks out crops. It's amazing, and he has a few goldfish in his system, and I'm always trying to encourage him to grow a fish crop that he could actually eat. And his kids like the goldfish, but put some bass in there or something, some bluegill.
That's what I reckon too. Yeah, I agree with that one.
Yeah,
the fish at my place live very dangerous lives. They're all heading for the barbecue.
Yes, as are mine. I mean, they are cute. You feed them, and you can get attached to them. But I grew up on a farm. We raised livestock, and it's just these. I have a very high respect for life, but we need these creatures to sustain ourselves, and they have their purpose. And I think it's important to respect the life force, and you do feel it. You cultivate these things, these creatures from the time they're very small until they're large, and you take care of them, and then you come to that point where you have to dispatch them and cook them, and so it is a solemn experience, I think, because I so much appreciate that life and what I'm getting from it.
And vegetarians who don't want to eat the fish.
Yes.
But you would think, then why do they do it? Well, the reason they do it is because they want to produce food in the most natural way possible and in an ecosystem, where there's no use of artificial fertilizers, pesticides and the like. So, we've got a growing band of hardcore vegans who are actually growing their veggies this way now. And it is eminently suitable for them. And, of course, they use goldfish or koi or some kind of fish like that they never intend to eat, obviously, but will provide the great bulk of the nutrient they need to do what they want to do.
Sure. Now, where do you think the future of aquaponics lies? What are some of the up and coming technologies?
Well, who knows? I don't know, but I really believe it's the way of the future for growing food. I really believe at this point in time that our indie series of plans has got all the elements in it that will work eminently well. Obviously, we need to go to better use of electricity. Even though our systems only operate on one pump and we've got it down to a minimum amount of power draw, but we need to be able to get off grid with it.
Yeah.
And that's very possible, but at the moment it's still a little expensive, I think, unfortunately. There's some interesting stuff out there, though, as your listeners probably all know. At the Innovation Centre in Oregon, where I was just a few days ago, the guy there, Aaron is his name, he's got a workshop, and man, he's got some stuff going on, about electricity and things like that. There's some smart guys out there, and we need those smart people to come up with solutions so that we can run our aquaponic systems off grid, definitely off grid, That's the way to go. And once we can achieve that, then there's no holding us back in the amount of food we can produce without any concerns whatsoever. The other thing is we need to be able to do it indoors. In the cold northern climates of the USA and Canada, you definitely need a good quality greenhouse. And in the beginning of this interview, you talked about the fallout from the Japanese disaster. Another good reason to have a good greenhouse of some description to protect your crops. And protected cropping is the buzzword now in the horticulture world for all sorts of reasons. So, that's where it's going to go. It's going to go into protected greenhouse areas. Go and grow anything, and you can grow heaps of it. Simple as that.
Yes, I agree with you with moving to off-grid. The pumps grind away and burn up a lot of electricity, and so I've been trying to move forward with any new system that I put together needs to be using DC power, and I started off. I just built a super small system. There's a little market nearby in this town called Talent, and somebody asked me to do a little aquaponics demonstration. So I just made a very, very simple 1 tank, 1 trough system out of a plastic drum and a bell siphon out of some scrap PVC pipe that I had, and I had some media, and I had some plants and a deep water culture system I was able to pull out and plug in and everything. But I realized that I wasn't going to have any power over there for the demonstration. So I was digging around in my shop, and I realized I had a 6 amp DC pump, and and I had a little bit of simple plumbing for it, and I grabbed my 45 watt Harbor Freight solar power system and a 12 volt battery, DC battery, and just put it all together and showed up, and I had an off the grid aquaponics system running, and I was sitting there while I was waiting on people to stop by. I was doing the math, and I with that setup, even without any sun, I could have run that pump for about 16 hours. And so, I mean, it is doable. It's completely doable, and I think it's important to go with the DC systems because you lose so much energy if you're running it through an inverter, and going from DC to AC. And I noticed on your Facebook page you had some really wonderful backup systems that were DC backup systems that really looked like the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Must have backup. To me, it's just it makes sense that you would have that because it's an absolutely terrible experience when you raise your fish to almost a year old, for example, if it's tilapia or some fast growing fish like that, and they're all barbecue size, and you have a power outage, a puff failure, or something like that, and all your fish die. It's heart wrenching. It really, really is. So, to have a backup system is absolutely imperative. And it's not that hard to do. That's the thing. It's not that hard to do, and it doesn't cost you that much money to do it. And
right.
From an economic investment point of view, it makes a lot of sense. So, backup systems for a long time. We sell them here in Australia. We also export them to the USA. And, it makes sense.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about, as far as pumps go, and moving water around through your system, is it better to use a water pump, or is it better to use like an air pump and with air lifts or even siphons or a combination of these things?
All our systems are designed to have a pump moving in one direction only. That is, we pump outbound from the sump usually, and that goes to the grove by gravity. Which we use a siphon because they've got no moving parts, etc. The pumps are all, at the moment, submersible AC pumps, although we do have running some systems on DC pumps. But DC pumps, we still need to find the best pump yet. It's still not manufactured out there as far as I know. That's the way we do it. And it works extraordinarily well.
Yes, and I think that redundancy is key, and you could just have simply a battery bank and a battery charger and a system in place that engages the backup if the power goes out.
Yeah, that's exactly what their backup system. It's a little box. It's got a little transformer and a little relay in it, and it senses if the mains power goes off, and if it does, it instantly sets to work with a DC pump which runs off a battery bank, and it's absolutely instant. It starts to circulate water in the fish tank only because your fish have the sensitive things in that system, and the moment the mains power comes back on, it switches it off. It's very simple, but it works a treat. Yeah, that's the way to go. You've got to have a backup system.
Yeah, another thing is, as we get to talking about sustainability and engaging in aquaponics to live a more sustainable lifestyle, the big challenge is feeding the fish. So we have to have an input there. That's where I've done most of my work, has been trying to come up with efficient ways to cultivate alternate fish feeds. I do a lot of work with the black soldier flies, and I have an arrangement with a local company that produces organic fermented foods, and they produce a couple 100 pounds of veggie scrap for me every week or so, and then I compost that with worms and with black soldier flies, and then use some of the worms and the black soldier fly larvae and pupa for fish feed, just as supplemental, not 100%. And so I'm always trying to get better and better at this. I'm not to the point where I'm developing all of my own fish feed, and that'll take some other ingredients as well. But I think that's where the greatest challenge lies for us is coming up with fish feeds that aren't based on fish meal.
So true. The breakthrough has come, though, here in Australia. There's a research organisation here called the CSIRO, which is a government research organisation, and just about 3 months ago they released news of a totally land-based fish food, that all the ingredients are land-based, and it's first for prawn farming, because prawn or shrimp farming is the biggest aquaculture farming in Australia anyway.
Right.
And they've released that. It's now out there in the marketplace, and people are very excited by that. They're actually getting better growth from the prawns and shrimps than using regular fish food. And they have announced that within another 6 to 12 months, they will release the production of food for finfish that is all land-based. Now, obviously, that technology will be sold around the world, and we're going to see a revolution in it, because one of the problems with sustainability in doing aquaponics or anything like that is the use of ocean fish for the fish meal.
Right.
And, we've got to get away from that, and it looks like the breakthrough has been made. But having said that, I know that in the USA, I've met several people over there that are researching exactly the same thing. So we're going to have several sources of land-based fish food very, very soon. But, of course, the three best fish in the world to use for that are tilapia, carp, and our Australian native fish called jade perch, because they're all actually vegetable eaters, for lack of a better word, or algae eaters.
Sure.
And so you can actually feed them, particularly carp. You can feed that on anything. You can throw old veggies in there. You can throw all sorts of things into the fish tank, and they'll eat it and do well on it. So, there's a lot of things we can do to make it more sustainable and easier to do.
My other challenge is keeping my water warm. It gets pretty cold where we live. And so today I'm running a solar system. It's just some old solar water heating panels from a swimming pool, and that are on the roof of the building. And so I could pick up about 5 degrees on a good sunny day with that. And, and sometimes I use electric heaters, which I'd like to get away from. But that's one of the challenges that we face when we're in regions where we have cold nights and cold winters, like in the Pacific Northwest. And I try to find that happy medium between the crops that I select for the season and the temperature. But one thing that I've been really worried about as we're coming into the fall season is the the water being warm enough to grow my plants and my fish, but too cold for the beneficial bacteria that's in my system. And it really is kind of a juggling act, trying to tailor everything so everything works properly.
Well, once again, the secret to that is one of the secrets to that is having a good greenhouse. A good place to house the things in. And there are various ways that you can heat the water, fairly economically, but it's still one of the challenges that needs to be overcome to be totally sustainable in places that have extreme climates.
Yes.
Earlier you asked me a question. Sorry, you asked me a question about pumps. Sorry to interrupt you.
Go for it.
We've got a lot of lag. A lag in the system. Yes, there's an American guy who lives in Hawaii. His name is Glenn Martinez, who has done some amazing work on airlift pumps like no one else has done.
Mm-hmm.
And he's actually taken out some patents on his work. He's someone worth following up, people. Glenn Martinez is able to lift water 20 feet using a very small air pump.
Incredible.
And that's a real breakthrough. And he's actually perfected it. I'm getting him to come out to Australia here in March to run a seminar on it, March next year. And we've just had him at the Aquaponics Association annual conference. And in Silicon Valley it was held. Breakthrough. Very smart man, actually.
Wow, that's great to hear. I've been fascinated with airlifts. I see them as a possible way of moving the water, oxygenating the water by using less energy at the same time. And so I've been hoping to do some experimentation with those as I learn more and get more adept at aquaponics. I'm always trying to improve the systems and reduce the resources that I'm consuming.
Absolutely.
At the same time, another thing that has to be addressed is pest control. And I've heard some claims made with aquaponics, about aquaponics that there's virtually no pests because you're not growing in soil and so on and so forth, which is not true. I mean, you're going to have pests, and where we're at, we get, fungus gnats and pretty much anything that's moist, and they cause some problems, and you could get aphids and whatnot. My stepfather was one of the early pioneers of using beneficial insects for pest control in your garden, and he started raising predator mites in the late 1970s and cultivating those. And he started a business called Nature's Control that my little brother owns now. And they don't produce the bugs anymore. They just sell and distribute them, and they do ladybugs and praying mantises and so on. But you in your videos, you show some other techniques that people can use too. Little things that you can mix up in your kitchen to apply to your plants.
Yeah, a lot of that in our publications. We use a combination of the two. We use some spray-ons, like spray molasses and a few other things that we do that we find works okay. And of course, we use beneficial insects as well. We try to use them predominantly, and we can keep our pests to a very good manageable level, actually. Summertime, of course, is worse than wintertime for that kind of thing. But, you will get some pests. People that make those crazy claims, it's just not true. I mean, obviously you'll get some pests, and, you might have to accept some kind of damage to some of the crop in occasions, but that doesn't matter. It's good, healthy stuff. If the insects want to eat it, it's good, pure food. So, but if your plants are healthy and strong and you run the place very, very well, it's just like our own bodies, we're just another creature out there like the others. And if we look after our bodies, we eat good food, we exercise, we do all the right things, we'll live a long, healthy, happy life. Same with our plants. If we do all the right things for them, some might get attacked by some insects, but by and large, you'll have very few problems.
Mm-hmm. Just getting off the track a little bit here. I wanted to ask you if you've seen anybody doing any work with saltwater aquaponics for growing kelp.
Yeah, we've seen some people attempt that. It's not that easy, really. Mm-hmm. And I think the problem with it is that there's no real interest in the byproduct, the kelp. Not at this point in time anyway. Commercially, there's not. I think that it's something we will see in the future, but it's still got a way to go. The main interest right now is in people being able to grow their own food and for that reason, saltwater species of fish, and that are not, not all that popular.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a few kelp products I like to take. I like to take a kelp supplement to protect my thyroid because we have had a lot of fallout over here from the Fukushima disaster that's ongoing over there. And there was another product that came out of Russia called Modafilin, and they were harvesting the kelp out of the Sea of Okhotsk, but that's become contaminated from Fukushima, so now they're harvesting kelp near Australia. I figure eventually none of the kelp is going to be edible as the ocean continues to get contaminated. So I've been investigating how to grow kelp, and I was just I always like to look at what other people have done instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. And
the good kelp comes from Tasmania. In Australia, in southern Tasmania, which is basically got the purest waters in the world down there. It's a long way south, and the giant kelp there is harvested sustainably in the sense that they only pick up the kelp that's actually washed up on the shore. When there's a big storm, it gets washed up. And giant kelp, and there's a lot of good kelp products made in Tasmania. Keep an eye open for that because as the waters around the world become more polluted, there'll be a long time before the pollution reaches Tasmania.
Yes, yeah, it will take a while. Eventually, it will convey down there, and I just I don't see anything that's going to change the continued releases of radioactive material from that plant. It's just they just keep flushing more water into it, and it flushes out into the ocean. And there's a lot of scientific models showing the plume that's in the Pacific right now, and it's just there's more and more material added to it every day. Well, moving on to happier things, we've just got a few minutes left here. Are there factors that might affect the flavor of your fish?
Yes, the main one is too many nitrates in the system. Mm-hmm. If your nitrate levels are high, then that will give the fish caused by too many nitrates in the system. And, of course, you can control the nitrates easily by controlling the amount of fish feed you put in and also by growing more vegetables because obviously the vegetables take the nitrate out of the system. So it's simple to control. And if you do have fish that you perhaps suspect might have a little bit of a muddy taste, then you just purge them before you eat them. In other words, put them in a tank with some salted water for a few days with plenty of aeration, and then
And I think you were breaking up there. We've had pretty good Skype given the distance. I've been amazed, but we've had it break up a little bit here during the interview. So basically, you were saying is that excessive nitrates in your system can cause muddy flavors in the fish, and nitrates aren't necessarily bad in your system. They won't hurt your fish, and your plants need them to grow. And so you could just simply add more plants to use up the nitrate, reduce your feed, and or purge your fish when you harvest them. And
exactly,
brilliant. Those are great solutions there. People oftentimes complain. I raise a lot of catfish, and people often complain that they don't like catfish because it has a muddy flavor, and that's probably why, because they're grown in an environment where there's high nitrates. So
that's correct. Yep.
So Murray, would you like to tell our listeners the best places to find you, find your videos, get your plans, purchase your products, and so on?
Aquaponics.net.au. Simple. Aquaponics.net.au. The AU on the end stands for Australia. So it's aquaponics.net.au.
And you have a YouTube channel as well?
Yes, I do. Just go to YouTube and Google Murray Hallam Aquaponics, and you'll find them all. They're all there. We also have a Facebook page, which is Murray Hallam's Practical Aquaponics, which has just over 18,000 people on it now. And we post on that at least every other day, something new that's happening in aquaponics. So that's a good resource. Once again, if you can't remember the name, just Facebook Murray Hallam and you'll come up with it. Not a problem. And we're happy to answer questions and help people wherever they are in the world.
Murray, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you today. And you have been listening to Off Grid Journey on UCY.tv. Our guest today was Murray Hallam of Practical Aquaponics. Thank you for listening, and we will see you again next week.